farmer was tired of people illegally parking on his land and got revenge. Running a farm is one of the hardest jobs out there. It means early mornings and manual labor under the sun day in and day out. When people continued to ignore one farmer's plea to stop illegally parking on his land, he decided to take matters into his own hands. By that point, he was done trying to do things the nice way and needed to start teaching people a lesson. Read on to find out what he did and what the end result was. Davao Bedekovic is the owner of a farm that thoughtless people assumed they could use as a parking lot. He has depended on his land and its mineral-rich soil for some time, but once a week, everything he works hard for is threatened. Ever since Bedekovic's village of Jakuševac became integrated with the town of Zagreb in Croatia, countless Zagreb residents would come into the area for the weekly flea market. Now, a part of the Zagreb municipality, the once small town now has an overflow of people on a weekly basis. That meant that the town had to deal with a lot of cars, far too many of them. Unsurprisingly, there just wasn't enough space to park in the provided area for the market, so people began to park wherever they wanted. Unfortunately, Bedekovic's farm was just across the street, so it became a prime parking area once the main lot had filled up. However, Bedekovic had made it clear time and time again that he didn't appreciate the shoppers parking on his farmland every Sunday. Although most people only see cars as a danger when they're moving, that certainly wasn't the case with Bedekovic. This is because when cars are parked after they've been running, they can release a lot of chemicals into the earth that will ruin fertile soil. Since Bedekovic is a farmer, his life depends on the quality of his soil and the crops that he produces from it. Bedekovic already had enough to worry about before people started parking on his farm, considering that his neighborhood is also home to one of the biggest landfills in Zagreb. Although strides have been taken to minimize the damage the landfill might have on his soil, the waste will affect it eventually. Because his crops were at risk because of the landfill nearby, the last thing that he needed was people parking on top of his already threatened land and letting their car fluids seep into the ground. At first, he tried to be polite and inform people of the problem, but it seemed to have the opposite effect. Instead, more and more people were parking on his property, more than likely further damaging his precious soil. A video that was recorded of the situation showed Bedekovic's property with cars parked in 2 rows like they were every single Sunday. Then Bedekovic appears ready to exact his revenge on the people poisoning his land, something he's been patiently waiting to do. However, he wasn't completely malicious when doling out his revenge. While he could have slashed their tires or had their cars towed away, he did something that's more than appropriate for the situation. After asking people politely to not park on his property again and again, Bedekovic knew that it was time to take action. So he hopped onto his red tractor, put the keys in the ignition, and got down to business. He had plans to plow his fields, but this time it wasn't to plant a new crop. As people stared at him in confusion, he continued to plow in front of the lines of cars on his property. For the most part, people went about their business. It didn't seem all that strange for a farmer to be plowing his field, even if it was on a Sunday. He made sure to do a good job too, going back and forth, making sure that the land was nice and turned. However, eventually people began to stop and stare, and it wasn't because he was doing an excellent job plowing. People started to realize that something else was going on at Bedekovic's farm. After some people came back from the market and got into their cars to drive home, Bedekovic's plan became clear. He had turned the soil so much that the ground was no longer drivable. Everyone's car was stuck in the tilled earth while Bedekovic stood there smiling. No one who parked their car on his property regularly ever imagined they wouldn't be able to get out. However, not everyone was as satisfied as Bedekovic. Many began to complain, and it wasn't long until the police arrived. When the police first arrived on the scene, they were confused to see all of the cars trapped in the freshly plowed fields. Having a lot of questions, they approached Bedekovic, who was sitting on his tractor. In normal circumstances, Bedekovic could have been charged with obstruction of traffic, but this was no normal situation. Yes, the land was Bedekovic's property, but customers of the market needed somewhere to park in order to help sustain the town's economy. After speaking with Bedekovich, police came to the conclusion that he had done nothing wrong whatsoever. Although it may have been inconveniencing for the people whose cars were stuck, he was well within his rights. The people had parked on his land without permission, and he has the right to plow his fields whenever he wants to. On top of that, he also has the right to protect what is his, especially if it's his livelihood. After their conversation, the police left the scene without even giving Bedekovich a warning. One woman in a silver Peugeot battled with her car to get it back onto the main road. The woman's car was completely stuck, and not even the police could manage to get it out. So, confident that the woman had learned her lesson, he decided to show her mercy. He brought the tractor back out and flattened the land around her car so that she could get back onto the road. One thing was sure, the woman would never park on his land again. After the incident, videos taken of what Bedekovich had done started going viral, especially on YouTube. One YouTube user praised him for his efforts, commenting, "People are just so selfish sometimes. Good that you taught them a lesson." Some criticized him, saying that he should have posted a sign or that the people couldn't have possibly known that it was farmland. Yet, the vast majority of people sided with Bedekovich and commended him for protecting his land in a peaceful manner as he did. Some YouTube viewers suggested that he could have used the opportunity to make a little side money. One person commented, "Sorry, but he should have just let them park, cordoned off the area, and then charged $100 for the parking, and heck, he could have put chains on their tires or something." Although this is an option, simply parking on the property wasn't the main issue. It was the damage that it could have on his crops. One sympathetic YouTuber wrote, "For those advocating the parking, just think rationally for 1 second. These cars are ruining the aggregate of the soil, and the toxins from the car can leach into the ground. With the landfill so close to his land, Bedekovich already had enough to worry about. The last thing he needed was cars damaging his land further every Sunday, leaving behind their toxins that would harm the property even further." Some even believed that those who had parked illegally should have faced the consequences of the law.